Welcome to Intimate Conversations, where we support you healing heartbreak so that you can live fully embodied, unapologetically, and deliciously free, being exactly who you are. I'd be honored if you'd please subscribe if you haven't yet already, and definitely share us with a dear friend. Okay, you luscious creature, it is time to get intimate. Hello, you delicious people. Welcome to another episode of Intimate Conversations with a man that I've been looking forward to interviewing for quite some time, the amazing Frank Rich. Let me tell you about him, and then we're going to get away to this delicious conversation. He's a former bodybuilder, entrepreneur, and there we go, nice pipes, a men's health coach and host of the Superhuman Life podcast. And after living with and battling addiction, depression, and anxiety for almost 2 decades, he's now on a mission to help men who are suffering from the same issues taking back their control of their lives through the power of faith and fitness. So he's helped thousands of men transform their physiques through his online coaching platform, where he provides content, programs, and services to men looking to build more muscle, drop body fat, and build their greatest bodies. And he's also the founder and the CEO of the Rebuilt Recovery, a company based on growth-centric, a holistic approach to addiction recovery. Rebuilt Recovery provides fitness training for men going through recovery, as well as one-on-one coaching for men aiming to break free from porn addiction. His goal is that by being open and transparent with his own struggles and having real and raw conversations with others who have overcome adversities, that he can empower you to face your darkness, take control, and ultimately create the life you have always dreamed of, your own superhuman life. Okay, I've already got shivers. That's pretty, that normally doesn't happen, Frank. So this is awesome. I welcome you to our show. Thanks for being with us.
Yes, well, thank you for having me here. I've never heard my bio read that eloquently, and thank you. I hope I can live up to what you just set up for me. That sounded incredible.
I sound amazing.
It's like, wow, am I doing all of that in the world? Wow.
Well, you can take a little edited version and just put it on loop or something when you need a little pick me up.
Right. I think I need that playing like overnight while I'm sleeping. Wow.
Oh, you're so sweet. You know, I do the same with myself with my affirmations. I put it on this little loop when I put my makeup on in the morning, because when I'm really in the zone, there's more behind than the words. There's the energy behind the words. Yes. Right. And it's real. It's real. 99.9% we can't see, the unseen. 0.01% of reality is the muscles and the things. So energy is important. Yeah. Thanks for acknowledging that. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah.
So I want to go all the way back, because I have a 19-year-old boy. All the way back to the very, 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 very first time you ever did porn. How did it happen? Why did you do it? How did you do it? Like, tell us what's going on in the world of a young man growing up.
Yes. Thank you. Wow, what a big question. What's going on in the world in above? But if we go back here, for me, it would be going pretty far back in time. I mean, over 3 decades. So for a little bit of context, I always think it's important to tell my age, because that is the genesis of the story. So I'm 38, I'll be 39 here in a couple weeks. So if we go back 30 years, the internet and internet pornography and the way that we see it and have it today wasn't a thing. So my introduction came in a way that men are not getting introduced to porn today, but I think it's relevant to at least share my story, right? So I stumbled across a magazine. I mean, like most men in my generation, it was our dad's stash that we found. And I think for me, the important part there is it wasn't like just a Playboy. So it wasn't something that was just nude images that was filtered with a lot of articles. I actually think that there was something to that back in the day, that men actually did read some of what was put in there. Like, I've gone through and there's some really good editorial pieces in there. But for me, my dad was into like the hardcore stuff. So the first exposure for me was like some of the most graphic images and materials. And if you think about a 6-year-old's mind, like, he's not equipped to handle and process any of that. So I think that began a level of curiosity, but also realizing, because the way it made me feel, that I probably wasn't supposed to be looking at it. So that became...
Frank, how did it make you feel? Sorry to interrupt, but how did you feel? You were aware feelings at 6? What did you feel?
Yeah, well, I definitely was curious, right? You know, like why do these bodies make my insides feel a little bit different? Like when I see a girl like at the pool, like we had pools. I grew up in Florida, so you would see people even at 6, like you're aware, like okay, female, they cover themselves, like the body looks a bit different. But when you see this, it's like, that makes me feel different inside. And I think really it was the curiosity. It's like, why is that? Like why aren't other things about this? Why isn't this on the TV? Why aren't these in other books? And if so, why was it hid? And why do I need to hide it now? So I think just the curiosity component for me, but it began a lifetime of living a secret in a double life, right? Because now I had probably what I describe as an addiction back then, but I had a reoccurring habit where I would go look at the magazine, hide it, put it away, go back to dad's stash, see if I could find anything else. And then I began to kind of see them in and around grocery stores. So anybody that remembers, like in the 90s, like there would be a place in kind of your shady, grocery stores, like not your typical ones that, like 7-Eleven, Circle K, but the ones that would maybe be a mobile, like with some shady signage or whatever. You could walk in there and literally be like right on the magazine. Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Figured out how to get them home. Right. So I think that began this, the cycle of living a double life. Yeah. Now we got the internet around 15, 16 was like, I can remember having a computer like in my room, and probably within an hour of me having that computer in my room, I found images online. I was in some chat rooms and you could just message people and you start trading photos, and it's like, am I even actually getting these real photos? And who is this? So yeah, I think a lot of why this is important and is relevant, because once again, living that double life, right? So on the outside, growing up, like I was an all-star athlete. Like I was, president of the school in elementary school. I was like A+, graduated 23rd out of my class of almost 500 students, varsity letters. So projecting on the outside, like a kid that's got it all together. Yes. Inside though, like a lot of depression, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of insecurities, obviously manifesting in my physical, right? Like, because I'm seeing these bodies, I'm seeing what they're doing, but I don't look like that. I don't feel that type of way. So from about 13, 14, like I was not comfortable taking my clothes off. I was not comfortable taking my shirt off at a pool. I was not comfortable being around other people, but I was still chasing this porn, just chasing this porn addiction.
Wow. So hang on one second. This is fascinating. So on the one hand, all of the looking good to society stuff. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the secret, I'll call it shame, guilt world. Yeah. And then it was manifesting as an expression of your being by not being comfortable in your own skin. You couldn't even take your shirt off at the pool.
Absolutely.
You didn't know how to be with it all inside of you. It was like a conflict inside of you. Is that right?
Yeah, no, 100%. So this gets me to, like, through high school, I was an athlete, varsity in a couple letters, or lettered in a couple varsity sports. Once again, like, recognized within the school, like, the best all around, going to go on and do these amazing things. But I'm selling drugs in high school now, and like I'm partying and I'm doing all these other things. Once again, separate, secret lifestyle, right? Like the world sees this one person, and Frank is really completely different individual. So you could assume, obviously, or you would be aware now of, like, obviously the cognitive dissonance going on in a young man's mind. Yeah. So I got into bodybuilding around 19, 20 years old, like right after high school. Like I just committed myself to it because, for one, I was like unconfident in who I was. I was insecure in taking my shirt off. So I said, well, I'm going to change this. I'm going to have to change the way that I looked. And that became probably an addiction in and of itself that probably wasn't too destructive early on. It began to get destructive later on in my late 20s. Wow. But I began to see some success in changing my body. So that led to, obviously, the bodybuilding, the entrepreneurship. And I don't want to hijack this entire conversation with my story. So to kind of speed things up here a little bit.
It's all fascinating. You're good. You're good.
Yeah. To kind of speed things up here through my 20s. So I was competing in bodybuilding. I got into sales very early on and started making a decent amount of money back then. I mean, back then I thought it was all the money in the world. And I look back now, like, you were such a clueless young boy, like, but still it was success, right? And it was success in the world that I hadn't really seen in my life. So I come from a product or a family of men that struggled with addiction, men that have struggled with suicide. So I think 3 generations of men in my family have taken their own lives.
Oh, wow.
So there was other things, obviously, like, that were contributing to some of the things that I was going through, but me succeeding in the world now made me realize, like, okay, the men in my family didn't do this, but I can go out and do this. But then there's these insecurities and struggles with, well, now you're still depressed, you're still anxious. Like, so I had a hard time, like, navigating life in my 20s because I'm winning, I'm getting recognition. I'm
Yeah.
achieving awards in bodybuilding. I'm starting businesses. The world is telling me I'm amazing, but I feel like I hate myself. I feel like I want to end it all.
Whoa. Whoa. Just a second. So the suicide that was going, suicidal ideations that were happening, you said generations. Did your father take his life?
My father didn't know. So I have a cousin, or I had a cousin. He was the oldest one in kind of our generation. So my dad's got 5 brothers and sisters. It's a big family, and each one of them had, minimum 3, some 5, 6. So there's a lot of us cousins. So my oldest cousin, I think when he was 16, I would have been 9 or 10. Took his life. My dad had a cousin that took his life, and then I believe my dad's uncle took his life as well. So nobody directly within my home, but I knew Shane pretty well. Like Shane was my cousin. He was 6, 7 years older than me. So that like hit the family. That hit me, and it probably saved my life. If I'm being completely honest, because there were multiple points where I contemplated it. There were multiple points. I was never at the point where like I had a pistol in my mouth. I've had conversations with those people. I was close. I was never at that point, but I think experiencing Shane taking his life and seeing how the family reacted to that probably played a role in keeping me here. And I've never actually talked about that on a podcast, but I do believe, looking back now, that probably played a role in it.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. My best friend died when I was 16. It played a very pivotal role in how I choose to live my life. So I get it. Yeah. So thank you for just slowing down and letting us feel the intensity of what it is to be on this planet, to grow up, to be successful bodybuilder, making the cash, but inside depressed, anxious, and suicidal ideation. So again, a lot to this double life that you were living. What happened, Frank, after that?
Yeah. So, God, that would take us to 2017. I was succeeding in business. I had a ticket brokerage. We were doing a little over $500,000 a year. Not massive, but it was, success, very small company. So everybody was taken care of very well. But I saw an end coming to that, though. For one, because I wasn't passionate about it. It was literally me chasing money. It was me chasing success. It wasn't something that I was passionate. I didn't wake up excited to buy and sell tickets to people to concert shows. But it was putting food on the table, right? But I did see the end, and I had this passion in bodybuilding, and I had friends that were succeeding now in the kind of, so this is probably when like online training and fitness kind of became a thing. Like we're talking late 16, early 2017, social media is beginning to become what it is today. So I had these friends that were like beginning to now succeed online in the social space. And I was doing shows at the time. I didn't even have a social media account. They're like, Frank, why don't you set up an Instagram and just start posting your videos and what you're doing to get you ready for the show? And I'm telling you, this will lead you to a business. So I started that in 2016. In 2017, I hired my first business coach. So I succeeded in business without having any help. I just went out there and just true grit, focus, intensity. Like I knew I was going to make it happen, but I wanted to speed up that process. So I believe in, in the role of mentorship and coaching, like speeding up your time and whatnot. So I hired a business coach back in 2017, and this was to help me put together Frank Rich Fitness and launch our first program, which is Masthetic Muscle. At the end of that first 6 months, so I hired him in January, and the end of that first 6 months, included with his coaching was a ticket and invitation to an in-person event. First time I'd been to like a business marketing event. I'd attended like some motivational summits in the past, but this was like strategic business marketing, how to set up funnels, how to run ads. First time going to something like this. And what's fascinating, I don't know your faith. I don't know. I'm assuming you're a very spiritual person. I don't know your faith behind that. So I didn't grow up with any, spiritual thing in our house. There was no, discussion of faith, religion, none of that. But I was always seeking, right? I was seeking information. I was seeking knowledge. I was seeking answers. And I think bodybuilding, I was looking for something. But when I went to this business event, it was the first time I was around like real strong Christian men, guys that were openly expressing their faith, guys that were putting God first, but guys that were actually leading the world and leading their families in a way that was impacting everybody that they touched. And I realized back then that like that was what I was always looking for. I was looking for those men. You know, and I'm not saying, I don't want to sound like I'm attacking the men in my family. I love my father. We have an amazing relationship. I love everybody in my family. We're close, but they weren't examples of what I thought I wanted to be or what I knew I was supposed to be. So getting in these circles began to show me like, wow, there's some really amazing, strong men out here that are having massive impact, but all of them are unified because they put their faith first and then everything comes together underneath that. So this became like an 18-month journey of me discovering and finding my own faith. And I surrendered my life to Christ in October of 2018. Incredible story. I've talked about a lot on the podcast. It happened on Church Street in downtown Orlando. Truly like a divine moment. I believe that. And that began, the process of me now looking at myself and beginning to really clean up my life. Because you could achieve like success in the world, but if you're miserable and unhappy, what does that success mean? So so I had to figure out, okay, I know I can do that. I know whatever I put my mind to, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna be able to accomplish it. But figure out inside here, figure out this heart thing first. So that was October 2018. The next 4 or 5 months, like I'm getting in church, I'm getting in men's groups, I'm getting in mentorship, like I'm just having conversations in a way that I've never had before. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. I stopped doing a lot of things that I was doing. And people hear that, well, you were a bodybuilder, but you were doing all these things. That's that dichotomy, right? Of that cognitive dissonance. It's living a double life almost for 20 years. I was very good at projecting an image and I was very good at keeping a secret life. But when I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop keeping this secret life. I'm just going to flush everything out. That's when my life began to change. So I stopped drinking in January. I went through a radical transformation physically, lost 21 pounds in that month, got down close to 10% body fat again. And what's interesting is in that 18 months of me discovering my faith, I began to stumble across some podcasts of other men that were talking about porn addiction. So I talked about it, I got introduced to it at 6. I then saw, it on the internet at 15. It stayed with me my entire life. So I worked in the wireless industry. I was one of the first people in the world to have a color screen BlackBerry. Within an hour of having that phone, I found the internet and I found porn on the phone. So it was always a struggle. It caused issues in relationships, so much to the point that in the last relationship that I was in, before I broke the addiction, I had a secret laptop because I'd been caught before with like the search browser history. I'm like, it's never going to happen again. I'll just have a computer that stays in the closet. And whenever you leave, that's when I'll bring it out. Like, so clear signs of addiction, right? Like you're hiding things, you're not having conversations. But when I began to be honest with myself, with the drinking, with the drugs, with all of these things, like the porn was the last one that came up. So I'd heard these podcasts, but I didn't really begin to look like and have conversation with people until after a workout one day, which is a weekly workout. I've been going to this gym for 2 years straight. Every Thursday, we'd meet with a group of guys, we'd train, and then we would go to lunch like clockwork every Thursday. Well, this Thursday, which was February 14th, 2019, the day of love, right? Valentine's Day. Obviously, we're on a intimate conversation podcast here. I think it's important. So I was in a relationship, but I went to the gym that day, did the workout, and for whatever reason, I decided not to go to lunch. And one other person decided not to go to lunch as well. His name is Zach. So Zach and I stayed back at the gym for like 10 minutes. Like, hey, let's just catch up a little bit. I'd love to hear what's going on in your life. So we're sitting in my car and we're just talking, conversation, life, what's going on, how's the family, how's work, how's business. Out of nowhere, he said, hey, Frank, I want to tell you about these breathing exercises that I've been doing. I learned from Wim Hof, and it's helping me harness my sexual energy, and it's keeping me from looking at pornography.
Whoa.
And this came out of nowhere. Like this, literally like the conversation went from what are you doing this weekend to let me tell you about breathing and how it's keeping me off of pornography. Now, Zach is a Marine. I hold the utmost respect for Zach, incredibly strong man, somebody that I truly admire and look up to. And when he said that, it kind of like caught me off guard, just like it did with you. And I leaned in, I was like, say that again? He's like, yeah, I'm doing breathing and I'm harnessing my sexual energy. And I was like, no, say the porn thing. He's like, yeah. I'm not looking at porn anymore. I was like, well, why does that matter? He's like, dude, you don't have any clue. I've been addicted to this thing for 5+ years. So much when he was fighting for our country in Iraq, like he was consuming porn 5, 6, 7 times a day. And that I believe truly was like a divine moment. Like God was there in the car with us because I knew then and there, like that was my opportunity. I've been thinking about this on my own. I've been watching the TED Talks. I've been doing the research. I read Your Brain on Porn by Gary Wilson. I said, okay, Frank, like if you're actually going to do anything with what you've been researching, now is your moment.
Yeah.
And so I took the opportunity, right? And I said, Zach, thank you so much. I don't know what made you feel you needed to share that with me, but I want to share something with you. I've been struggling with this for 20 years, and I just dumped it all out. I'm like, I had this secret computer. I watch porn like at the mall. Like I'd go up to the Dillards and I'd go into the private bathroom and I'd watch it there and masturbate like in public places. I'm like, but I'm so sick and tired of it, man. I think you said that so that I was going to tell you what I'm going to do right now. And I made a commitment to him. I said, Zach, I am committed to getting this out of my life forever, but here's a couple things that I need to happen. I need this to follow through if I'm going to be able to succeed. Because I knew that if this was a real addiction, like I wasn't going to just one day make a decision and then change my life. Like we needed some accountability. We need some follow-up. I said, number one, Zach, I need you to check in on me. Will you hold me accountable? Can we have conversations? He said, absolutely, brother. I love you, man. Like we're going to do this. We're in this together. Second thing is I was in about a 4-year committed relationship at the time. We've been living together. We had some issues, but I did potentially see a future with her. But I knew that if that was going to happen, then she needed to know the truth. So after telling Zach that I needed him to be accountable, I said, I got to go home and I got to tell Stephanie about this. And he's like, you sure, bro? And I was like, yeah, if I don't tell her the truth today, when am I ever going to do it? Like I knew the importance of just radical honesty, even back then. Wow. So the drive home was about 30 minutes. And I wrestled with it the entire time. I mean, the thoughts of like, what are you doing? Like, is it really that big of a deal? Why would you tell her this is going to ruin your relationship? So in fact, I didn't say anything to her that day. It wasn't until the following morning. Like after sleeping on it, I was like, yeah, you got to follow through with what you just said, or you're just exactly the same person that you've been. You've said you're changing, so go ahead and make the changes that are necessary. So I was working from home at the time, so I've been up early. Stephanie, I've always been a morning person, so she's getting up. It's probably 8:39. Like she's in one of the bathrooms at the house getting ready, and I could hear it. And I said, okay, here's your moment right now, Frank. Like, what are you gonna do? So I went in the closet and I grabbed the laptop and I just walked into the bathroom and I said, hey, Steph, like, I need to tell you something. And she looked down and she's like, what's the computer? And I was like, just stick with me here. I know you know that I probably watch pornography. And she did, because like as an addict, right? Like I would try to push and see, number one, what could I get away with? But two, could I bring her into my world? And she was always against it, but she wasn't like against me looking at it. And I think that this is important because I know that there's women here, like your man shouldn't be consuming pornography. Like it's not okay for your boyfriend, husband, significant other to consume it. And we can get into maybe some of the reasons why I believe that later on, but there's a clear sign there. But so I said, I know you know that I watched this, but I don't think you understand the level of addiction that I have with this thing. And just like I unpacked everything with Zach for 20 years, I did it right there with Stephanie. The difference between that conversation with Zach and the one with Stephanie is the one with Stephanie became very, very emotional. And I said, I know you probably think that this is bullshit. I know you probably think I'm lying. Why would you ever trust me? But I want you to know how serious I am about this, that I'm going to destroy this computer. This is the only way that I watch pornography right now is on this computer. And I took it. It's a laptop. And it's more impressive when I tell it than it really was, because laptops are made from two pieces. I just took the computer and I ripped it apart. So I'm holding two pieces of a laptop in my hand. I said, see, like I'm committed to doing this. But then there was awkward kind of moment between the two of us because our relationship wasn't great. So how do we kind of solve this? So I just kind of turned and like walked away, and I was like, okay, bye. Like, and then I knew she was like, had no clue like how to process what was going on anyways.
Sure.
But it was important because I had to go upstairs and I had to make another phone call, send another message to somebody, which was actually a video message. And in that video message, I'm talking to my friend Josh, and I tell Josh everything. I was like, hey man, you were there with me when I was saved in Orlando. We met in Toronto. You've been with me every day over these last couple of months. Like, I want you to know that I've been keeping something from you, and this is what it is. But I also want you to know that I'm committing to get this out of my life, and here's the proof. And I showed me throwing the laptop into the garbage. It was trash day at our townhouse, so it was right outside, so I just threw it in the garbage. And then I looked back at the phone, and I said, Josh, I don't know what's coming out of this, but I know something bigger and greater than I've ever done will come out of today.
Yes.
So that was February 15th of 2019. And when I say the next 3 months changed my life forever, like it's not just a fancy buzz, like slogan or saying. Literally, the way that I began to see the world completely changed. And I know now that there was a rebooting and resetting of my brain. There was a rebooting and resetting of my dopamine. There was a rebooting and resetting of my heart. So I literally began to see myself in the world differently. And that became the genesis of the podcast, because as somebody that had had success in the business world, as somebody that had had success in leading other people, like been corporate leadership training, entrepreneurship success, bodybuilding success, studying high performance, reading 500, 600 books over my 20s. Like, if I was still struggling with an addiction for 20 years, what about the men that don't have my background? What about men that don't have my resources? What about men that don't have access to the people that have access to? They need this information. So that became the genesis of the Superhuman Life, was just a way for me to put my story and have a place to interview other people to bring their stories to the world. So the first 6-8 months of the podcast was just conversations with others about addiction and addiction recovery. But as somebody that was already kind of a public, I won't say influencer figure, but I had a social media and I had a following, I had an email list. What ended up happening over the next 6 months in terms of the social side of things is people stopped saying, thank you, Frank, for all of your fitness information. Thank you for helping me getting bigger biceps. Thank you for helping me get my abs back. To thank you for your open and vulnerable conversations. It's amazing to hear men talk about these things. So that was the first wave of messages I began to receive. The second wave of messages came about 6 months later, and it said, hey, Frank, we like what you're doing. I'm struggling. Can you help me? Yeah. And at first I was like, I don't think so. And I don't really want to, like, just listen to the podcast. Cause we're giving you everything that you need right then and there. But very fortunate and blessed to have amazing people in my life. They were the ones that were pushing me. Cause every time I would show up to like a men's group or I'd have conversation, they're like, how's the podcast going? It's amazing. I'm getting these messages and people are asking for help. Were you going to coach them? I was like, no, I don't know how to coach. And they're like, no, Frank, like this is going to be your mission. This is your calling. This is way bigger than you're ever going to understand it to be. Yeah. So January 28th of 2020, right before COVID, I did a small little test on social media. I'd learned a trick at a marketing event, just how to kind of ask if people are interested in your services. No program built, nothing ready to do. So I'm looking for 5 guys that are committed to ending this little secret in their life. I'll coach you over the next 4 months to quit porn, reboot your brain, get your life back together. And I put it out there. Within an hour, I had 2 phone calls with people set up, and within 3 hours, I had $6,000 in new revenue in my bank account. And that became the genesis of what is now, the high ticket coaching program, which has turned into Rebuilt Recovery. We've helped 3,000 men at this point.
3,000 men. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit. This is an incredible story. And it was led by vulnerability. And that's called bravery. People think vulnerability is weak. It's clearly a strength. Yeah. Wow. What happened to Stephanie?
So we stayed together for about the next year. And I probably had made some poor decisions and choices. But so we had also had, like, Stephanie had some health issues as well. The home that we had been living in from 2017 to 2018, we found out after just like intense doctor's appointments and medical and like 6 months of like crazy expenses that the house had mold, like intense black mold. So I told you I'm from Florida. Like the black mold down here is like, it's literally deadly. So you pair that with somebody that's got a weak immune system. She has autoimmune rheumatoid arthritis. So it attacked her, and it almost killed her. So while I was going through my recovery and like experiencing the world in a whole different insight, she's like almost dying in the bed next to me. And I think she had a hard time like seeing me excel and change, and now going out to change the world, when she's having a hard time like even getting out of bed. And I probably made some mistakes here, but July of 2020, so after about 6 months of starting Rebuilt Recovery, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to help the men that I needed to help with her still in my life. And it's not an attack at her. It was that these men needed 100% of me, and she needed 100% of me. And it was a tough decision. And yeah, so we're no longer together.
Yeah.
I still look back at, her in the role that she played in my life. And it's not one of these things where it's like, I never wish I would have met her. Like I never wish I would have spent my time with her, because without her, without that motivation for me to change for her, I probably never would have been able to stick through this in the beginning. So I see that the role that she played there, I wish her the best. We're not really on speaking terms anymore at this point, but.
Got it. Does she know that you feel that without her being the inspiration to change, you might not have actually taken the steps? Does she know that?
It's a tough question for me to answer. Has she heard it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But has she taken it in?
Has she fully received it, and does she fully believe it? No, and that's nothing I would ever be able to change with her.
But at least you can rest knowing you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Breakups are, we're told they should all be conscious uncoupling and you'll be friends forever and everything. I had a 12 custody battle. Like,
and I'd be curious to kind of get your take, because I know this is kind of up your area of expertise. Like, I don't believe she was right for me. For one, because she met Frank when Frank was addicted to porn. She met Frank when Frank was living a double life. So was she attracted and in love with Frank, or was she attracted and in love with the representation of who Frank put out into the world?
The double life Frank, yeah.
And that's how probably, maybe this is me just, imagining this, and this has been my grieving and healing process, is to create this fake avatar for myself. But I do believe this to be true. Like, she just wasn't attracted and in love with this current version of myself.
Yeah. And yet she was perfect for the time that it was there to wake you up.
Yeah.
And hopefully she received her gifts as well. Yeah. I believe that we all attract the perfect person for the lessons of the moment. Be one person for your whole life, and you just keep growing and growing and growing together. For me, I'm more of the growth-oriented partner. So I'm the one that keeps growing. And then there's so much dissonance between, well, who you fell in love with and who I am now. It's not a match anymore.
Yeah.
And so
I was aware of is as well. And what's been interesting, so I've been able to interview a woman on my podcast, Jolene Wynn. Her title, like on social media, is the Porn Addict's Wife. Because here's something that I believed is, in a relationship, if your man is struggling with a porn addiction and he begins to work through it, that is the ideal opportunity for the woman to begin to work on herself. Yeah. Not that she's got issues as big as a porn addiction, but you and I both know that every single human being right now has ways in which they should and need to be improving. Yeah. So if you look at that as an opportunity, okay, he's not addicted to porn because he doesn't love me. There's something unfulfilled in him. And if he's going to grow and become better, I need to grow and become better. And then we grow closer to each other. And Jolene reconfirmed that for me. She's like, yes, that is what women need to be doing. Women don't need to be overseeing their men's recovery. They don't need to be playing the mother, the accountability role. They need to look at this as an opportunity. It's like, okay, maybe I played a small role in this. I don't need to take all the blame and responsibility, but let me look at myself and see where am I not living up to my full potential and begin to work on myself there. So yeah, there probably was an element of that. Is I'm very growth centric. And at least at that time in her life, Stephanie wasn't, because she was just worried about living.
Yeah. Yeah. So for your men that come into your coaching program and they haven't told their wife or girlfriend or significant other about this, do you have not like a script, like they need to be an actor, but like a way in which to present it for the best outcome, to own their growth and even to invite hers? Because to me, communication is a relationship. No communication, no relationship. Yeah. Good communication, good relationship, right? So this is a big moment. So do you coach them on how to break the news?
Yeah, we'll walk them and we'll hold their hand through that process. We actually have inside of our program. So this is not probably my zone of genius, right? Just based upon my experience with it, like me sharing it led to a failed relationship. But I wanted to bring in people that could help. So obviously we've worked with Jolene, so we have her insight in how to handle that. I brought in some other women that are not as much involved in the industry, but have experienced this in their own
Yeah.
life and in their own relationships, to give like real trainings and talks. So I don't give a script, because a script is like, okay, this is going to work for every scenario. Like
Sure.
when we're working with them and we're coaching with them, we're going to walk them through exactly how it's going to fit into their relationship. Many times, by the time they're at me, the woman already knows. Like, right? Like, it's unfortunate that's the case, but I would say 70% of the men that I'm working with, the woman is already aware of it. So it's not something we need to go help them and coaching them and having that conversation. For the 30% that don't know, we'll figure out what is the right time. And that's going to be based upon the relationship, number one. Like, is it a 30-year marriage? She needs to know almost immediately. Is it a woman you've been dating for 2 months? Let's get yourself under control first, and then figure out, A, number one, is she actually going to be somebody that's going to be, significant in your life? Because many times through the process, right, the man changes just like I changed, and he realized like I was holding on to this relationship because it was filling a hole in myself. But when I realized that I had the ability to fill that hole for me, I don't need an external source to fill it. So we don't have a script. I would rather work with them specifically in how to handle it in their life. But there are resources within our program that'll guide them. Like, what is the emotional state of the woman's mind while she's hearing this? So as you're saying things, you're already preparing yourself for how she's going to respond to you. So we do give them those tools.
Yeah, beautiful. I remember my last relationship he had two different houses. So when we were in the same house, to my knowledge, he didn't do porn, but when I wasn't there, he did, but I didn't know until I found out. And I did take it so personally. Like, I really felt like she on the screen was more important than me. Or why can't we just have some sexy time on the phone? Or why do you need that? I really couldn't understand it. And it hurt. And then I thought, well, what else are you doing? If you're doing that, are there escorts coming over when I'm not around? Like, my mind just went crazy. It really, the secretism of it made me go bonkers. And it really, really hurt. And yet I heard you say a moment ago, it's not that I don't love you, is that I have an addiction. So help me and the listeners and viewers understand. So it's not that she's not, quote unquote, good enough, or not putting out enough, or not sexy enough, or not beautiful enough, or is it?
It's a great question. I think in order for me to answer this question, I want everybody to reframe how they even look at pornography. So if we can understand that internet streaming pornography, the version in which we're experiencing it today, is a drug in and of itself that we don't really fully understand. If we think about it, what has it been here? Maybe 30, maybe 25 years. So there's not enough time to really understand, okay, what are the real effects? But what we do know is the way that the brain responds to it is very similar to your hardcore high dopaminergic drugs. So we talk about cocaine, methadone, all these drugs that are very high dopamine related. Pornography has very similar effects. It's super normal stimulus, right? So where I believe a lot of the addiction is coming from is the need to get dopamine in our life. I don't believe that most men that are struggling with porn addiction today have what would clinically be described as a sex addiction. Because I've talked to enough men that are addicted to porn that have never had sex. How can you have a sex addiction if you've never actually had sex? You're addicted to the dopamine. You're addicted to the release. You're addicted to the pattern of that behavior. So if we can look at it through that lens, right? It's a drug in and of itself, and it hijacks the man's brain, and we detach ourselves from he's going there for the woman. He's going there for the drug. So the question from that point would be, if it's a drug similar to all your other drugs, if your husband has a cocaine addiction, is it because he doesn't find you sexy, or is he hooked on the drug? If your husband is addicted to alcohol, is it because he doesn't find you attractive, or is he hooked on that? So I don't know if that would help you or any of the women listening. It's like we need to reframe and look at it from a different perspective, that it's not he's going to these women because he thinks he's attracted. He's going there because his brain needs a hit, and he doesn't even understand, because it's not a conversation that's had enough. Most people won't even accept that porn addiction is a real thing. That's one battle that I'm constantly fighting. You actually have to accept that this is a real addiction. But if we look at it through that perspective, I think that is the best way a woman can detach the emotional side of things for herself.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And so I have another sort of side question that I want to ask, but I wrote it down so I won't forget. Go over again to how it's destructive to the male brain, the male body, the need for something to fulfill you and how it can be fulfilled in other healthier ways. How can the dopamine be provided in healthier ways? And then I want to loop all the way back to the actual act of sex, when all you've seen is porn, and then you bring that into the bed as opposed to a more tantric or sensual or heart connected making love. I mean, it can still be sexy and slap her ass from time to time. That's still all great, but it's the porn that I've seen isn't anything I ever do. It's not real to me. It's not real. So let's start first with the healthier ways to get the dopamine hit that's nourishing.
Yeah, and great, two great questions, very important things, and I'm glad we're going to tackle both of them. So I think most people are misled or misunderstood in actually what dopamine is. Everybody thinks about dopamine is tied to like pleasure, right? Like I do something, makes me feel good, hits a dopamine. And that is one case, right? Like there's a pleasure component to dopamine. The big reason we have dopamine is it is a molecule or a chemical of motivation. It's meant to be dripped out while we're in the pursuit of goals beyond ourselves, right? So you have a health and fitness goal. You want to get some abs. You want to build some muscles. When you take steps to build those muscles, driving to the gym, doing the workout, choosing the chicken breast over the cake, right? Those are all actions that you take that are in line and taking you closer towards your external goals you've created yourself. So you get small little hits of dopamine. And this isn't how it works, but I think it's a great example of representation. So let's say dopamine operates on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. So 10 being the highest level, 10 would be like a super normal stimulus, right? Cocaine, meth, pornography. When you do that, boom, level 10, right? First, second exposure, you're going to get a hit of 10. Maybe when you go to the gym, like your brain gives you like a level 2, right? It's a little bit of dopamine, but it's not at the level because it's like, I'm actually doing some physical work. Like this is exhausting, but I'll get a little hit, like a little endorphin, right? Maybe like if you're working on like a passion project, maybe launching a new business, it's a bigger goal than just yourself, right? So there's other people involved. Maybe that takes you to a level 5. Well, if pornography is going to give me a level 10, right? And our brains are adaptive. When we get that 10, we know what a 10 feels like. So why do we ever go to the gym? Why do we ever work on our passion projects? Because I don't want to when I know what 10 feels like. So I begin to just chase, not even watch it. It's the chasing because it's tied to our motivation. So as we're in the pursuit of more pornography, which is where I talk to a lot of guys and they're like, I watch porn for 8 hours a day, but it was like 30-second clips because I was just looking for the next hit. I was looking for the next video because they're constantly chasing that next level. And what is also important to understand is the desensitization effect. So first, second exposure, you've now established a new baseline. Well, that was with the first porn that you saw. So if the average age of first exposure is 11, they're getting exposed and introduced to maybe casual sex, obviously like some softcore stuff, maybe on porn. But over time, that same sex is not going to give you a 10. That's going to give you to a level 7. So this is where you get into the genres, right? You go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and then that stops working. And now you mentioned it, escorts, trafficking, massage parlors, all these other things. So that's kind of the escalation effect of how that works. Well, how do you reset that?
Yeah.
It's a process, right? And it's a manual, and it's not an enjoying process because you want to go to 10, but your brain is only going to give you 1 or 2 by going to your goals. But you have to create external goals beyond yourself and begin to chase those. Now, there's another component that I didn't mention. So dopamine works on a cycle. It's a pain, pleasure cycle. So with every hit of pleasure, which is going to be the hits of dopamine, it's going to be followed by pain. It's got to drop itself off so that it can reset itself back to baseline. And when I talk about pain, it's not like physical pain. It's not like if I go watch porn 2 hours later, my elbow is going to hurt. The pain manifests in the feelings of depression, anxiety, insecurities, right? Yeah, not good enough, shame, guilt. So that's the pain side of things. So what ends up happening though is we go give ourselves a level 10 hit, pornography, and then over time we begin to chase more and more and more, so we're getting deeper, higher levels, but then we know every time we get that hit within 24 hours we're going to feel bad. So that creates the addictive cycle, right? The relapse recovery cycle, where it's like I can go a day without it, or I can go 7 days without it, but then I'm binging for 48 hours because I got to fill that massive hole that I've created for myself. But to get out of that, it's committing to it. And I think the best way is to get like all your junk like right in front of you. Like how bad is this? How destructive is it in my life? Get all this stuff out in front of you and be honest with yourself. You can't create good relationships. You're not a good husband. You're not a good father. Like you're subpar at work. You should be making way more money. You're not as healthy as you could be. Like get radically honest with yourself. But then from there,
how can you even look in the mirror?
Yeah. And then from there, create an external goal, create a vision for your life. And this is actually what we walk them in through. If in 5 years from now, if you can commit and live 100% porn free, how can you improve all those areas of the life that you just told me have been impacted? And then that becomes the aim, right? So that becomes what you wake up and chase every single day. And if executed and done properly in a safe community with accountability and support over time, that's what's going to reset that. And you begin to experience the joy, dopamine, and pleasure in chasing the goals, chasing your purpose in this life, as opposed to just, mindlessly consuming pornography all day. So does that clear on answering the dopamine?
Yeah. One question about that though. There's got to be a real horrid detox period as you're making that shift, even though I totally get the vision and I'm all about all the different areas of life, and I'm all about community and all about accountability and all about mentorship and the payoff of feeling like a noble badass that you did what was hard for your mission, vision, purpose. I get all that. I love all that. What do you do in that first period of time when they're just like, it's got to be a nasty fall, a nasty state of depression or anxiety or insecurity? Like that's got to be the place that they need you the most.
Yeah, well, that's a flat line. I mean, it is an actual term in the reboot recovery space. So yeah, what you're speaking to typically happens once you commit clean and you go 3 weeks, probably around that 3 week. Because when you join a program, like the first couple of weeks, like you're excited, so adrenaline is going to run you through the first couple of weeks. So what we see is week 3 to 6 is when it gets really difficult for the men. This is where you need community, right? You need to have regular conversations. You need to know that when I'm struggling with something, is there somebody that I could reach out to just to have a conversation with? Because a lot of times just opening up and discussing what you're going through is enough of that healing that you need in the moments, and then allowing us to work through it over the next 10 or so weeks. But we give them support, we give them community. There's real-time practical tools. So there's some breathing stuff. We actually hired Zach to come in and build a section within our program with the Tai Chi meditation, the Wim Hof breathing stuff. So real tools, like when you're struggling, like physically, like lean into the program and use the tools that we're giving to you. And then it's not the sexy answer, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, if it is difficult, like you got to suck it up because you created this problem for yourself. And if you use that it's difficult to get out of it as the excuse to never getting out of it, then you're playing a victim to your addiction. So I want to give you tools. I want to give you community. But at the end of the day, like you created this problem for yourself, suck it up and work through it a little bit.
Suck it up, buttercup. Okay. I like that. Well, it's true though. That's called like radical responsibility, not judgment. But like I created this and I will create something new and I got this.
And then what you realize is like when you just sit in that discomfort for like a short window of time, like it goes away, but then you get this like revelation, like, Frank, dude, like you've been running from this feeling to go chase pornography. When you sit in it, what you learn about yourself, what comes to the surface about who you are and who you can be and what you should be doing is so empowering. So a lot of times that second time they do that and they just sit and work through it, which is actually in our program. So we get them ahead of that. So we actually put them through a 48-hour fast in week 2 to kind of almost create that suffering without having to go through the flatline period. Because what I'm going to tell you is when you go 2 days without food, if it's your first time, you will get hungry. Like not to the point you want to like ravenously chew your arm off, but there will be elements of discomfort. There will be elements of like, I need to go eat. But when you sit in it for a little bit and you're like, this is just a signal for my brain, you realize like, dude, I'm so much stronger than I ever really thought I was. So that's one tool we actually give them in our program that I think helps them in that flatline period.
I'm on day 9 of my 28-day detox. So I know exactly what we're talking about with my non-caffeinated cumin, coriander, fennel, and ginger tea right now. So I totally understand. And I totally love this because I've been trained in quantum psychology. And when I take clients through the shame, the fear, the rage, everything that they have only felt 2 out of 10, maybe even an 8 out of 10, but what you resist persists. And if you don't feel it at a 10 out of 10, you build it. It doesn't. When you match it and you feel it fully, that's the quantum psychology, the image, thought, emotion, body, sensation, fully matched and felt from when that trigger or trauma is occurring. You can literally alchemy. It's alchemy. You process it, you integrate it into, like what you said, wisdom. It's not that we're getting rid of fear. We're integrating it into your courage. We're not getting rid of the pain. We're literally embodying your power. But the only through by sitting in it and feeling it. So I give them these little 10-second bursts. I'm like, feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it, fully match it, magnify it, intensify it. Here, I got you, I got you. And they're like crying or screaming or whatever. And then I go, great. And just breathe. What's arising now? And over a very short period of time, we can get someone who's like suicidal, depressive, hopeless, raging, furious, shame and guilt, you name it, all the way to stillness, to calmness, to peace. And then from that place, then I ask them, because that's where they're in heart coherence. We can measure that shit, right? They're in heart coherence, so they can hear their intuition. The best of their brain is on board. They know what they know. They just couldn't access it. I'm not telling them anything. I'm just facilitating them home to their glory. And it's very fulfilling. So we do similar work. I don't make them do a fast, but I do my own detox.
Love it. So are you 28 days, just that tea, whatever recipe that you spread off, or are you any food at all?
Oh, no. So it was just only a day tea. Okay. And then it very slowly has beginning to be mung bean soup, like twice a day. But still, that's basically it for 28 days. Mung bean soup. So I've got some protein, and then you can add some vegetables to it. But it's really, I don't know if it's appropriate that I'm on your podcast or we just talk at another time, but I've been through quite a physically abusive and verbally abusive relationship. There's criminal court coming up in September. It's really something I've never dealt with before. So I'm so intelligent. I can help everybody else with their relationship. Very successful. Why is it that this pattern keeps happening? And I've discovered I'm learning about level 4 trauma. I never understood there were levels. And level 1, 2, 3, 4, level 4 trauma, there's no emotion. So I couldn't see it to shift it. There's no body sensation. So I couldn't follow it home into stillness. And it's not even hopeless. That's level 3. You're dead. You've given up. So there's nothing, I couldn't see it. It was a blind spot. And so now I've found practitioners that are helping me witness me to get from that level 4 trauma that has been continuing to attract the abusers, not my cognitive brain, not my 5% of my conscious mind. The 95% of my body is looking for that abuser again from childhood, and I'm healing it. So I'm only halfway through my 4-month journey. And she's like, there's a lot in your stomach that you haven't been able to stomach about life. And your digestion is off. And so I want you to do a detox to help your body to heal as we do all this.
Wow. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful stuff. So I'm just now beginning to kind of get my grasp on understanding this, but there's a direct tie between, obviously everybody knows the gut brain axis. So there's a tie from your gut health and how your brain produces these neurochemicals, right? And there's a company I'm supposed to be meeting with. I think they're based out of somewhere in Connecticut or maybe right outside of Boston. They've actually patented a process where they create supplements that somehow turn those signals back on to where you're now, even with an unhealthy gut, like it changes it to your brain to be able to send those signals to produce those chemicals of dopamine, the chemicals of serotonin. We have other tools that we use inside the program. Obviously, the fasting, I think, plays a role in resetting your gut health. We have the option to do a carnivore diet, which is a very great tool to reset your gut health as well. But yeah, there's a lot going on there between the gut and the brain that I think we're going to begin to hear more about, kind of mainstream in the healing, kind of therapeutic side of things, the role that is playing.
Cool.
Well, that's great. I love to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, let's keep in touch about that, because I do, like the very first few days, I couldn't remember shit. I forgot to pay some of my staff. Like, it was not good. But anyways, I'm like, sorry, thanks for reminding me. I'm just a little out of it right now. Okay. So let's begin to wrap this up with the shift in to the degree you're willing to share, your sexual expression. Because if the only lens you've looked through is porn, and then you're living this double life that's not necessarily heart connected. And to me, we're either motivated from fear or inspired by love. It's like a choice, and it's a choice of coherence and heart openness or heart closure. When we're ashamed of ourselves, our heart is closed, right? But when we're proud of ourselves, and even our wobbly parts we're proud of, we're like, hey, I fell down, it's okay. I get back up again. So compassion, vulnerability, right? Sex changes from genital copulation into lovemaking. Like, so much more is possible. And to bring faith into the conversation, to me, you bring God into the bedroom. I mean, there's this sacredness, this reverence, and this rapture of connection that's possible. So I'm wondering if you can share your journey or some of the journey of the men of, like, how has the sex actually changed in their relationships now that they are through their porn addiction?
Yeah, I'll have to use the men of Rebuilt Recovery because Frank has been completely abstinent for 3.5 years.
Oh,
So big part of giving my life to Christ and walking faith out is the most important thing in my life. Is I'm committed to doing it God's way. And probably that was one of the decisions maybe that I made in the relationship that maybe led to the end of it, because we had had a very active sexual relationship. And then I was kind of the one that said, hey, I'm going this path. I'm going to shut that part of our life off. Probably shouldn't have stopped living together. Probably shouldn't have stopped sleeping in the same bed together without that sexual, without that intimate part of our relationship. I have no problem, at admitting that. But for me, it's been, a 3.5 year journey of working on Frank becoming the man that Frank believes he needs to be in order to find the right woman that God has created for him. So for me, I've committed to doing it God's way.
wow.
What's amazing though is I can tell you that I've heard from dozens of women, dozens of wives, girlfriends, and spouses that send me messages after the program thanking me for giving them their husband
Mm.
for the first time. So and I had another story. We actually had this video. So we do a series with like our top students called the I Am Rebuilt series. We throw the videos on YouTube. We do other marketing pieces. Had a gentleman just a few months ago. He came through one of our group coaching programs. Amazing man, family man, 2 beautiful young kids, beautiful wife, successful business guy, was doing some other horse racing stuff. Very accomplished individual. And I remember him talking about it like probably week 5 or 6 on one of the group calls, like how his sex life was just instantly improving. And in the interview that we did with him, he's a father of 2 kids, his words, Frank, I had sex with my wife for the first time through this program.
Yeah.
So for however long, a decade of being with her, every time they were sleeping together, he was envisioning the women in the screens, right? He was envisioning, fathered 2 children without having sex with his wife. So yeah, I wish I had some better examples of my own
No,
personal journey, but
that makes me cry.
hopefully I can come on in a couple of years and maybe revisit that conversation, because I'm looking forward to it. I've made that decision.
No, it's beautiful. I honor your truth. I honor your path. And I think that's another beautiful gift you're giving us, is that when you really get aligned with your truth, you'll know your path, and living it with integrity
Yeah.
must feel extraordinary.
Yeah. Now, what I can tell you that it's done for me though, like removing the physical intimacy out of my life has enabled me to create real deep intimacy with almost every person that
Yeah.
I meet. I'm a
Yeah.
6'3", 260-pound man, like big. Like I carry a presence, like the loud guy in the gym, right? Like I got a 600 deadlift, I got a 500 squat, like on the books, like somebody like you wouldn't expect at the end of a conversation with another grown man to hug him and say, I love you. But
Yeah.
that's the way that I communicate with my friends. That's the way that I speak to the men within our program. So while I haven't been able to experience the physical intimacy in the way that I know that I will, I've been able to create real intimacy with every single human being that I met in the last 3.5 years. And that in and of itself, if I never experience sex again, that will leave me fulfilled.
Wow. Whoa. That's quite a statement. And yet it might blow the viewers and listeners away, but it doesn't blow me away, because I'm an intimacy expert. I chose to be an intimacy expert. To me, intimacy is the umbrella in which sex is there, but it's also the way I speak to my son when I'm willing to be present and vulnerable and honest and own my shit and clean up my messes. It's also the way I speak to my clients. It's also the way we're having a conversation right now, vulnerably, transparently, honestly. And for me, I was just doing an IG live this morning, and she's a single lady and I'm a single lady. And I was saying, I make love to life. I make love to the universe. I don't wait for genital copulation to have the masculine and feminine within myself penetrate the world with my radiance and be penetrated. What you got for me today, God? What do you got for me today, divine? Right? Bring it. And then so I'm playing with life. I'm making love with life. So I don't wait just for the bedroom. So I don't feel lonely. And I don't feel unfulfilled. I feel intimately connected, like you're saying, with everyone and everything. And I'm not choosing not to have sex. I do have my vibrator, I will tell you that. But I have my pleasure time. But I'm not waiting for him. If like the celibacy, I'm not choosing celibacy, but I am choosing to live a full life, to
Yeah.
raise my vibration to meet my match. Like I'm ready for my match. I'm not whatever playing the field just to get like a hit. I'm not saying yes to booty calls, right? So that's the way I feel sacred about it. So it's a different way of doing it, but a very similar path,
Yeah.
where we still get to have intimacy all day long, every single day.
Every day. No, I love that. It's so beautifully articulated. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. No, I'm in full agreement. And this, I don't know how this makes me look or sound. I've had my pleasure. I did that for 15 years. Like, and I was pretty good at getting what I wanted. Right. So for me, like, I'm so looking forward to that moment when it's my wife for the rest of my life in God's designed way. And I know it will be truly more special and more intimate and more pleasurable if that's what I'm chasing. I don't think I'm chasing pleasure though. Like I think I'm chasing something truly meaningful. But I get that, like, with just feeling connected and intimate with everybody. And what's interesting, right, is so I do some business coaching on the side. I have a small role in a business mastermind. It's amazing because I get to give back to community that changed my life. I get to help other business owners grow and excel their businesses. So I end all of my group coaching calls with my men with letting them know I love them. And it's just a greeting that we give to each other. It takes some of them a while to give it back to me, but most often than not, by the end of the 16 weeks, like, they're expressing that same greeting back to me. But I had a young man I was working with inside of the business coaching mastermind, and I felt closer to him than I did most of the men because he reminded me a lot of the men within our program, was in the same demographic, probably was going through many of the same things. We were together in Nashville at an event, and after dinner with him, or with the whole group, I spent most of the night talking with him. I gave him that expression and I said, I love you. And I could sense the uneasiness in him. And I think that's where probably you're at as well, right? Because you've spent your life now and you become an expert at this. You're just going to walk out and you're going to live your being, right? But when people aren't open to accepting that, it's like it's a sign. I can now walk into almost any room and give me 5 minutes and I'll point out the guys that are struggling with porn addiction, just because there's that essence, that energy that they're putting off, the inability to hold eye contact, their uneasiness in how they navigate conversations. So I don't know why I felt the need to share that part, but
no, but you're free in the giving of your love, because you're giving it to all of you now, not just half of you, the double life anymore. Yeah, it makes total sense. I remember the day, Frank, when I decided quite early in my coaching career, because I was doing it by the book, and this is how I've been trained, and this is what we're going to do on this call. And I said, oh, just fuck it. I'm just going to love them. I'm just going to love them because I do. And I just got out of the way. I let go of the strategy. And that's when my spiritual relationship with the divine really increased, because I was no longer doing it to them. I was just the facilitator. Just use me for them. And that's probably what my greatest prayer, just use me fully. I get it.
I've done a video on YouTube every day since July 28th of 2020. We're now we're doing 2. So we do one long video, I say long, it's 7 to 10 minutes, and then one short every day, but I haven't missed a beat. And I believe the only way I've been able to keep up that cadence and that delivery, because I don't script a video. I don't have a strategy. I don't have an agenda. The camera goes on, and just whatever the title was that I was thinking about, the message just comes literally, like you said, comes through me. Like, okay, God, and it's improving. And the same thing here. Like, when I interview my podcast, like, I'll do some research, but I don't come with a series of questions. Like, I'm just here to have a conversation. I can kind of feel the same thing that you're doing.
I went through your website, and then I'm just like, can't wait to meet him. And then here we are. Exactly.
Love it.
Awesome. So as we complete, I want people to know, certainly the gentleman, that if you go to www.the7step-guide and spell out the word 7, I'll put this all in the show notes, everyone. But tell us what that is, a free ebook for the guys.
Yeah, so that's a 7-step guide to living life without porn, because I think a porn-free life is something that you create, not something you fall into. So that is the, probably take our 16-week program and siphon it down into 7 actionable steps. those would be the steps. So it's a free book, free resource. You can find it there, or and it'll just walk you through that process. Some of the things we talked about here today: doing the audit, getting clear on the problems in yourself, casting that big vision, how to build the community, how to get the accountability needed, how to build internal self-belief, because there's something we didn't really talk about. Like, I believe that a man will only fail in removing this out of his life once he makes a conscious choice and decision. There's a lot of guys out there, I wish I could stop doing this. Yeah, one day I'll stop. Once you truly commit to, like, I'm removing this out of my life, you only fail for one or two reasons. And the biggest one is the lack of belief in and of themselves. Most men that are struggling with a porn addiction or trying to remove it have said a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen times, this is the last time. This is the last time. Everybody has had this part in their life. This is the last time I'm eating the cookie. And then on Monday, they blow the diet again. Anyways, so that belief, though, what it does is it begins to ingrain in their subconscious, like, you're not going to quit this. Like, you're a liar to yourself. Every single time you say this, 3 days later, you're reverting back to it. And you know how powerful the subconscious brain is, right? Like, the amount of control that has in how we operate in the world is significantly greater than what we're consciously aware of. So we could change that belief system. We could change the beliefs about ourselves, that it doesn't matter how long we've been struggling with this, I'm going to get it out. And I think that's what helped me, is like, when I told Zach, like, there was not a doubt. Like, I just knew. I said, Dad, Zach, I'm committed to doing this. Now, I knew that there was going to be a struggle, that there was going to be a process, but the thought of ever returning back, because I felt like my life was on the line, right? So for me, the belief in myself was probably built through bodybuilding, was built through entrepreneurship, was built through those series of victories that I had in my life. So we show you tools on how to kind of work on that self-belief within yourself. But yeah, check out the 7-step guide. It's right there. And that would be the best resource for anybody looking to at least begin to take some steps.
I love it. So that's for any of the gentlemen listening. For the women listening who may know that their partner is doing porn, but doesn't want to go read the 7-step guide, right? I don't believe, this is just my opinion, that unless you choose it yourself, as opposed to being told to do something, it's not going to go very well if you're told to do something. You've got to choose it yourself. And I believe that women can be a catalyst, an inspiration to awaken the grandeur in their masculine, partner. So do you have any advice for women that are listening that want to inspire the best in their partner?
Yeah, I would direct people to episode 124 of my podcast. The Superhuman Life. It's on every platform. So Apple, Spotify, whatever, anywhere where podcasts are playing, we're there, or you can find us on YouTube. So that's the conversation with a porn addict's wife. Jolene Wynn. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So
stunning.
That hour-long conversation would give most women everything they need to understand what the man is going through, understand signs of it, how to maybe initiate that conversation, and then what she should do while he's working through the recovery. Very good conversation.
I love it. Stunning. Great. All right. Then my last question is from your heart to all the viewers and listeners. How would you like to complete this conversation?
Other than just saying thank you.
What does your heart want to let us know?
Man, I wish it was something bigger other than I just love you all. Thank you. If you're still here with us, thank you for sticking around, and I appreciate your time. I hope something shared here resonated, inspired, educated anybody listening. So thank you, Allana. Thank you, audience, and I love you guys.
That's beautiful. That's how I end every single episode. I love you and I've got you. So thank you. Perfect. So stay with me as I press stop on the record button. All of you viewers and listeners, there were nuggets throughout this entire podcast. My request is you just take 5 minutes and write down something that really moved you. Maybe go for a walk in nature, maybe journal, maybe meditate about it, but allow this conversation to move the dial on your amazing life in the trajectory of your greatest life. We love you and I've got you. Thank you for joining us for another edgy, transparent episode. I invite you to dive deeper with our intimacy blind spot assessment found at allanapratt.com so you can stop unknowingly repelling the very love, intimacy, and connection you desire. Thank you for being who you are. I love the shit out of you. So until next time, I've got your back.